Good morning, everybody. It's Jeff Goldberg for the Sales Pro Network. It is Friday, January 12th. We're a week and a half into the new year. Have you achieved your 2024 goal yet? If not, get moving. There's still plenty of time, but you got to act now. If you don't know me, I am a sales coach and trainer. I work with both individuals and organizations internationally to help them do one thing and one thing only: get measurable and sustainable sales increases. And I founded the Sales Pro Network a little over 3 years ago to elevate the profession of sales, to give salespeople, if I could speak, I'd be a professional speaker, to give salespeople a place to hang out, network with each other, learn, and of course, increase their own income for themselves, their companies, and their families. And if you've been with us before, you know that every Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern, we either do a live interview with somebody who can add value to the profession of sales, or I do a live training. 99% of the time, it's someone who can add value to the profession of sales. And I guarantee you, my friends, today is no exception. A few quick notes before we introduce our guest. If you're watching us live, please say hello in the comments. If you're watching us live on Facebook, but have not connected your account to StreamYard, it's just going to say Facebook user. So please include your name. And of course, if you have any questions for our guest during the show, put those in the comments and I'll pass them on. And if you're watching us on the replay, please put replay in the comments. And good morning to you, Jerry Marlowe. Good to see you, my friend. For those of you, by the way, who are expecting Clifford Starks, who is a professional MMA fighter and an executive coach, to be the guest today, that's because I said he was going to be the guest. I booked him about 6 months ago, but he had to unfortunately back out at the last minute. Well, not the last minute, but it was like Monday or Tuesday. And I got a very amazingly lucky, because typically, I don't know if I've mention this to you guys, but we're booked up all the way through August right now. And I'm meeting new people all the time and booking them for, at this point, August and September. But I met our guest today just this week, and I was so impressed with her. I was actually going, when Cliff said he couldn't make it, I said, oh, I'm going to do a training this Friday. But when I met today's guest, I said, oh, no, I can't wait till August to bring her to you guys. So please welcome. She's a Six Sigma Master Black Belt. I'm going to ask her exactly what that means, because I know the term Six Sigma, but I don't know what a Six Sigma Master Black Belt is. She is a premier business coach for Goldman Sachs, the major corporation, and she's the founder of Firebrand Consulting. Please welcome Dawnna St. Louis. Good morning, Dawnna.
Good morning. How are you?
I am outstanding. It's good to see you. Before I get to the 1,000,001 questions I have for you, Dawnna, can you please tell everybody maybe the 1 or 2 or maybe 3-minute version of your background? What got you to be doing what you're doing now?
Absolutely. So I hated sales when I was younger. I was homeless when I was 19 and got into tech when, not shortly after I was homeless, but I ended up falling accidentally into tech, really got out there and started getting into the whole consulting world, because at that time, the tech boom was just kicking off. And my business partner and I decided that we wanted to test out starting a company. Well, he couldn't sell water to a person who was completely dehydrated and dying. Quite honestly, that wasn't his superpower. He was definitely a full techie without a personality. I was the techie that they used to kick out of the tech. They're like, can you calm down and be quiet and stare at the wall like the rest of us? And so I really had to learn, know, and love and everything about sales. And so that's kind of my background, where I created my own methodology for people who are like me, who were intimidated by sales, who were afraid of sales, who were expert at what they did, but really didn't know how to sell.
Got it. So why do you think you were afraid of sales?
Oh, I'm going to go ahead and blame it on TV. Because everything on TV always showed the salesperson in a very negative light. They were always the used car sales guy with the button down too much and wear too much hair, and then the medallion trying to sell you a piece of crap that he knew was a piece of crap. So it was always somebody trying to force something on you that wasn't good for you. And I didn't want to be that person. And they were always too pushy. And it was none of the things that I wanted to be in life. So I was really one of those people who didn't like sales or salespeople, and I didn't want to be anywhere near it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you weren't really afraid of sales. You were afraid of that picture of the used car salesperson, or
I was afraid of
cheat.
Yeah, I was afraid of being that person. I didn't want to be that person. And, of course, when you don't have good examples of it being any other way, that's what it was. And quite honestly, I was raised in the hood, and the people who were selling usually carried guns in little baggies. So I didn't want to do that either.
Yeah, and if you don't see the picture of the pushy used car salesperson, then you see Willie Loman from Death of a Salesman, who's
Right.
just a horrible, depressed loser. So I can certainly understand.
Yeah.
By the way, my father, my stepfather, and both of my grandfathers were career salespeople, and I swore I would never go into sales. Not that they were pushy or thieves or cheats or anything like that, but none of them ever made a really good living. And of course, 48 years later, I'm not only selling, but I'm teaching people how to sell. And
Right.
good morning,
Right.
John Hill. It's good to see you. So, how did you go from being homeless at such a young age to building a $250 million tech consulting firm?
So really, I'll tell you, we I'm one of those people that if it's tech, I'm an engineer. I'm basically in many ways IT and tech engineering. And if there's something that can be built, I can build it. That's kind of my superpower. And I got into the tech world at a time where, tech was booming and tech consultants were everywhere. And like, no one understood tech. And so my business partner at the time and I decided that he had to do a class, he had to do a thesis, and he was really getting pushback from his professor on his thesis. So I'm like, no worries. The best way to get someone to shut the hell up is proving them wrong. So why don't we just go get one consulting gig using our methodology and prove them wrong? And when I say our, he was in school, but I did his homework. And so, and by the way, I didn't have a degree at the time. I didn't get my degree until after I retired. I was literally a high school graduate. So I'm like, let's go and figure it out, right? And so we put together this methodology. We decided we were going to go and start pitching it. And our first engagement that we pitched was for $4 million. And the funny thing about that is there was like, oh my God, $4 million. Listen, $4 million sounds great, except for when you realize that you pitched it about $2 million too low. Yeah. So our first pitch actually put us in the hole, and we had to go and pitch some more and get some more gigs to cover up for the 2 million. So that's really how I got into it. I got into it by, and I got into IT really by reading every book that was out there that was IT. I was very much self-taught. And if I read something, I'm going to implement it. So I'm definitely one of those people who reads, then does, then corrects. So yeah, that's how I got into IT and then into sales.
So am I correct, given what you just said? You're really good at systems and processes, yes?
Yeah, that's what a Six Sigma is.
Got it. Can you explain what is Six Sigma? I've heard it a million times, and I know it's a methodology for like quality assurance and stuff like that. What is Six Sigma, and what's a Six Sigma Master Black Belt?
So Six Sigma is really, so there are several types of Six Sigma. You have lean, you have non-lean, but the long and short of it is if there is a process, Six Sigma they are the people that go in and they make the process more efficient. They're always looking for space in order to streamline a process. Sometimes that includes that when you're talking about lean is more about the human interaction with the process. Non-lean is talking about just the process itself. And then there are different levels. White belt, meaning you're just starting, like you know how to spell Six Sigma. And then a master black belt is really the person who is all the way at the top of Six Sigma.
Got it. Very impressive. Now, I know that at one point you left Florida almost completely broke, and within like half a year, you'd already started earning six figures, and 6 months after that, you were earning seven figures. Was that when you built the tech company, or was that something else?
No, that was something else. I left Florida. That was 7 years ago. So I had, because of, not all relationships end well. So I ended up, I know it's surprising, right? I know. Like, I thought they were all like, I read the book. It started with Once Upon a Time and it ended with Happily Ever After. So somebody lied. But anyway, I literally left with $2,500 and I went to New York and I started picking up the phones. And within literally, it was not a long time. It took me 90 days to really start seeing the fruits of my labor. And I had seven figures in my account by the end of that year.
Wow. Wow. I love what you just said. Picked up the phone. So many salespeople today are simply not doing it. Now,
Right.
I completely understand why. It sucks. It's hard. There's a lot of rejection, and it's very difficult to get through to people. But I still personally consider prospecting by telephone to be the most cost effective and time efficient way to fill your calendar with appointments if you don't have enough. Now, when I built my business 18 and a half years ago, that's all I did. I sat on the phone all day long. I had worked for a sales training company, went off on my own. I had no clients. I had nothing to do all day except prospect. And you can use emails and all kinds of other things. And I love all that stuff. But the phone is the quickest if you know how to do it well and you do it consistently.
Right.
What I did was I taught myself and worked with others to help me get better at everything else so that I could get away from cold calling as quickly as I possibly could. And I often say, not jokingly, I'd rather live in my car than ever have to cold call again, other than other than the once a month that I do it now, just to make sure that when I'm teaching people how to do it, what I'm teaching them is still working. But I want to ask you about another topic, influence. When I do my research, I go to people's websites and their LinkedIn posts, and I saw you have a program on influence, or at least partially on influence, or framework.
Mhm.
When it comes to selling, my belief is that a salesperson's job is not to convince, not to persuade, or not to influence people, but you've built a framework around influence. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I do believe that we don't convince people. Like that's not our job at all. But we absolutely leverage influence, which is completely different. Influence is a great way of building trust, which is something that we have to do. Influence does not mean that I'm on this pedestal and everyone's looking up at me. It literally means that I'm being vulnerable. I'm sharing some of my beliefs and things that I've gone through, and then using that is just another way of influence. So we actually created a quiz that people can take to understand what their superpower influence is and how they can leverage it more in sales. And I'll give you a really good example. So, and I'll make it kind of high level. So let's say two of the personalities. One of the personalities is what we call a spotlight personality, right? They are significance. They want to be in the spotlight. They want to be recognized. They want everyone to see them, that type of thing. Then we have another completely opposite side personality, which I is called acceptance. I kind of teasingly say that they're almost like a martyr. They are the person that's like, no, I'm doing it for the team. It's not about me. It's about the team. If I am a spotlight personality and I am selling to an acceptance personality, and all I keep bringing forward is that spotlight personality, or I try to press my spotlight personality on that person, they're going to be repulsed. Right? So they don't want my spotlight superpower. They want me to say something like how I can leverage my spotlight superpower to make their team better, to make their team stronger, because I need to listen for the cues that they're giving me to tell me what they are. When I understand this, and by the way, this is from Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics, which is he's like the father, believe it or not, it's not Freud. He's like the father of psychology. And it's one of the things that we look at, like, I can sell better to certain people than to others. But if I'm listening really carefully for what their personality is and how they leverage it, then I can sell to them even better. So that's the type of influence we're talking about.
Got it. I'm glad you straightened that out, because when I think of influence or persuasion, I think of, we're trying to talk somebody into something that they don't want or don't need or
Right.
can't afford, or trying to mislead them. And that's just not the way I sell and not the way I teach people how to sell. So thanks for clearing that
Mhm.
up. There's something else that you work with a lot, which I appreciate, because I do this with my coaching clients too. In sales, mindset is a crucial factor for success. What's a wealth mindset, and what do we need to know about mindset in general when it comes to selling? And how can we create and maintain the right mindset, especially if things aren't going particularly well at the moment?
Yeah, it's funny. My co-founder of my company now, we were talking about this the other day when the company, first started, and she was like, how do you consistently walk in the room, you know, with the company? Like, this company was brand new, and she's like, you're walking in the room as if this company is a multi-million dollar company already. And I'm like, well, it is. So the first thing is that I'm one of those people that 100% believes that you create your future, right? Like, there's not somebody pulling the strings, you create it. And so here is a great way for you to think of a wealth mindset. I'm going to actually give this to your audience right now for them to do. I'm going to give them 2 questions, and this will tell you everything. The first question is, you're walking down the street, and a few steps behind you is another person. And all of a sudden, this guy walks up to you and he says, Jeff, I see the good in you. I see that you are an amazing human being. I want to give you $1 million, and literally just gives you $1 million and keeps walking. A few steps later, and you overhear this, he sees this other person and he says to that person, he's like, you know what? I see the good in you. I want to give you $10 million. And then he keeps walking. What's the first thing you think?
Why didn't I get to be that second person?
Right. Okay. So we're going to come back to that. Right. Okay. Next question. You bought a house, and on this house, you have 2 acres of land. I tell you, when I sell you the house, Jeff, if you walk 7 paces out and dig 7 feet down, there is a chest filled with 7 figures. 7 figures. You got $1 million in there minimum, right? You own this property. You bought this house. This is on your land. 7 paces out, 7 feet down, 7 figures in the chest. Are you a millionaire?
Not yet.
Right. You got to work on your wealth mindset. So here's why. Here's why. So first of all, someone just walked up to you and gave you $1 million. You're worried about the other person's millions that you can't spend. Right? They may have gotten $10 million because they got $9,500,000 worth of medical bills. So they actually ended up with less than you. Right? But you can only see that they got more. It has nothing to do with you. Someone else's light has nothing to do with your light. Right? The light that you have is yours. Shine it as brightly as you can, because what happened is you missed out on what was really important, which is you just got $1 million tax-free dollars. Right? So that's the first thing. What is it that I have, and how can I appreciate that more? That's number 1. Number 2 is, in creating your future, you might have to do a little work, but there is $1 million on your property that you own. You're a millionaire. Just because you can't see it, just because you haven't touched it, doesn't mean it's not real. And when you recognize that it is real, you will start moving in that way. That's the wealth mindset. You move differently when you know there's all I got. I mean, yeah, I'm going to have to dig a little bit, but quite honestly, 7 paces out, 7 feet down, I got 7 figures. I'm good. I'm a millionaire. I'm a millionaire from the moment that I trust this person. They told me it's there. It's there.
I think so. That was the thing that got in the way of that second one, because my first thought was, why would somebody do that? I don't even know that it's really there. So that's why I said I'm not a millionaire yet. If I go out the 7 paces and 7 feet down, then I would be a millionaire. But I completely get what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. So that's the wealth mindset, right? The wealth mindset is that you create a future where 7 paces out, 7 feet down, there's $1 million every time you get there, right? It's just waiting for you. It's there. It's just waiting for you. That is the wealth mindset. But this is the wealth mindset that every salesperson has to have. You have a goal that you have to hit at the end of the quarter, whether that's a $50,000 goal or a $50 million goal. It's there waiting for you to hit it. As long as you know you're going to hit it, you'll start taking actions as if you will. That's a wealth mindset.
So how do we keep that mindset going when we're not seeing any evidence, especially if things are going poorly? Because in sales, look, you've been in sales a long time. I've been in sales in a long time. I've been very successful in a number of sales jobs, but there have certainly been times when I've been more or less successful and things just aren't going well. How do you keep that positive attitude, the right mindset when things are challenging?
So we normally look at challenges as roadblocks. This thing is stopping me, right? Do you watch basketball at all?
I don't.
You don't. Do you know what a pivot is, though, in basketball?
I do.
Okay. So you'll have a person that's blocking you in basketball. Now you have a choice. You can stand there and look at him, which isn't going to get you any closer to the basket, by the way. Focusing on the guy standing there blocking you is not going to get you closer to the basket. Or You can plant one foot, can do a spin, you can get around him and get closer to the basket, right? You can break his ankles doing this. So most people see the challenge and they focus on the challenge rather than focus on the opportunity to pivot. If I am having, and we've had challenges, I started a business December of last year. It did 7 figures in 7 months. And then we hit this lull. I could focus on the lull or I could focus on the change. I focused on the pivot, right? And so when you run into those challenges, it's really what you decide to focus on. Most people struggle and they focus on the problem and not the pivot. I see obstacles more, and I know people say they see obstacles as opportunities. I don't see obstacles as opportunities in the way people say that. I see obstacles as a point that I need to pivot. That's all it means to me, right? Like I'm making 80 calls and no one's answering. Maybe I need to pivot and send some emails out that make them want to pick up the phone. Maybe I need to get on their LinkedIn and start liking some of their content. So that way, when I do call or when I do send an email, they'll answer me. Maybe I need to stop pushing the product that I have and start listening to what it is that they want first. That's the thing. A lot of times we're not doing the things that we just say, oh, I got to just keep doing this thing. And when it doesn't work, we say there is an obstacle. No, it's an opportunity to pivot.
Got it. And a lot of times it's also that we're not calling or emailing or contacting the right people. And that's my next question for you. Quite often I find that salespeople have either little or no clue about who their ideal client is, what their avatar really is. So what do we need to know about identifying our ideal client?
We have, the one thing I'll tell you is that we have a whole thing, a whole document that we use in regards to avatars that goes from everything in regards to, what movies do they watch, right? Which people are, salespeople are always like, why does that matter? Believe it or not, it does matter which movies they watch. It tells you a lot about their psychology. So for me, when it comes down to identifying your avatar, you first have to step back away from your avatar and identify the 3 things about your product that'll give you a breakthrough. There's 3 specific elements that you have to look at, right? And you don't have to do all 3 of them. You just have to pick one: the what, the who, and the why. So I'll use a new what. You have to look at your product in terms of a new what. Now, the what's are the harder ones, to be very honest. They're the most difficult. AI, 6-8 months ago, was brand new in the industry. Like ChatGPT was like brand speaking new. But new what's like ChatGPT are what we call big bangs. They're a big bang, they fizzle quickly, and you are surrounded by competition because look at AI now. There's so many AI everything's out there. So when you have so the first thing you want to look at is maybe there's a new what that I have. The second one that you can look at is a new why. So when you start thinking about your why, is your why compelling enough to create a cult? Literally a cult. So I'll use the cult of Apple. Steve Jobs had a very compelling why. His why was, I don't think you have to know 850 million buttons on a BlackBerry in order to be the most brilliant person at work. I think we can do it with one button. Right? And that was the thing. He was like, you don't have to know how to work a Windows registry system. We can actually think differently and say, what if we make this less complicated and easier for our users? What if we make it so easy that a first grader could use it? Right? That was not, listen, for techies, it was like, what? No, they need to smarten up. And he was like, no, but what if they didn't? What if we made it intuitive? What if we smartened up? What if we started thinking differently? Right? That was so strong and so powerful that people would crawl buck naked over broken glass in the middle of freaking winter to stand in line to spend a premium amount for these phones. Because think about it. These phones were twice as expensive as the nearest competitor at the time. Right? So that's the second thing, a new why. Here's the cool thing about a new why. It's longer lived. much longer lived. It creates a cult, and it's hard for other people to compete against it. It's also the hardest one to market because you got to believe it in your soul. The third one is a new who. Now, this is where we talk about that client avatar. You have to be so clear about whether you're in red ocean or blue ocean, whether there is chum in the water in a feeding frenzy, so everything's red. There's a bunch of sharks out there. Or whether you're in blue ocean, there's nothing out there. So to get into blue ocean, you have to think differently about your product. So I'm going to give you a really good example. One of my clients, her name is Dawnna Winter-Funday. She's an immigration attorney, right? Her what is that I sell immigration law. Her who is that I work with people who want to come to this country legally, because I really do believe that you shouldn't have to win the birthplace lottery in order to be successful. That maybe it's not United States, maybe it's Dubai, maybe it's whatever. So she's really big on immigration law. Well, she wanted to, as a coach, go out and help other lawyers add immigration law to their business. While that sounded great, and that was like a no duh, of course, where else are you going to sell it to kind of behavior? What she found was that area was too much red ocean, that particular who, too much red ocean, too many people competing, too many sharks, right? And her customer was somewhat interested. She switched last year and she said, what if I go after notaries, people who can't practice law, but they can do everything other than go to court? They can fill out all the paperwork. They can learn everything about immigration law. They just can't go to court. But I could be their pro se attorney. By switching from going after attorneys to going after notaries, her business did $1.5 million last year just on the coaching side. We're not even talking about her legal side. Switching your who. So think of become the IKEA of your product. It's not just a bowl, it's a planner. It's not just a planner. It's, you flip it upside down and it can hold a lamp. It's a table, right? What else can it be? And who else can it serve? If you figure that out, you'll make more money than you know what to shake a stick at.
Wow. Brilliant. I love the example of switching to a notary. I also love what you said about, what movies do they like? Because one of my favorite warm-up exercises when I do live training, to get people to speak is, tell me what your, biggest sales challenge is and what's your favorite movie. And you learn so much about people by knowing what their favorite movie is. A while back, I was asked that question. A guy in an audience said, "Oh, my favorite movie? That's easy. A Clockwork Orange." And you could see everybody in the place go, "Oh boy, that's a little wacky." Prospects turn themselves into clients is my belief. I don't believe we talk anybody into anything. I believe people choose to do business with us, and they do that when they see the value of what you're offering them. How do we best communicate results? Because you're big on communicating results to a prospect. How do we do that?
Well, first of all, you have to know what they want. And what I find is when I'm talking to, whether I'm working with my big clients like the Amazons or Starbucks or Microsofts of the world, or even my smaller entrepreneurial clients, what I discover is that they talk too much. Somebody gets on the phone and they go, "Oh my God, I really like your product. Tell me more about it." And they start doing that. You've now allowed your client to direct the sell. That's 100% not your job, right? So the first thing in order to understand people's results is you have to ask them 3 questions. First is, what's going on in your world right now that makes you even want to look at the solution? It's the first question I ask with everyone that I talk to. So what's going on in your world right now that you get on the phone with me to talk about sales coaching? Like, why now, right? It is so critical to ask that question because now you understand whether, number one, this is important or not to them. And if it is, why is it important? And in that question, when you ask it, there are so many follow-up questions you want to ask because you want to get a full view of their world to understand why they're doing this now and what transformation they're really looking for. A lot of times we ask people, well, how do you want to be transformed? They don't know. They don't know the possibilities because they don't know your business. So stop expecting the prospect to have the answers, right? Like I tell the salespeople all the time, it's not their job. Then the second one is, so how did you get here? What have you tried already? What worked? What didn't work? And why do you believe? Most important question you can ask them next is, why do you believe something worked, or why do you believe something didn't work? Understanding your prospects' beliefs is critical, because what you're really doing is connecting your beliefs to their beliefs. Number one, because when people believe how you believe, they'll show up more often. Ask any church. That's number one. And then number two, you also understand how you all are connected from a belief perspective. And then you want to go to number three, which is, and my co-founder likes to back into this. They'll say, listen, it sounds like what you want is this, the desires, right? We call that utopia. And then they'll say, or she'll say, tell me what we're going to celebrate in the next 6 months when we work together. And then after she gets that, it says, so if we don't work together, then it sounds like, and then she goes to what we call dystopia. This is what you're not going to have. This is what you're not going to get. This is going to be the fallout. So you could do this one of two ways. You can go to the fallout and then to the celebrate, or the celebrate and to the fallout. But when you know those three answers and you're really listening, you should be able to frame the result that they're looking for. You can't frame the result that they're looking for if you haven't listened to them. You can only, sell the product, like, oh, I think you want these Beats headsets, right? You want these, you need these headsets. I think you want these headsets. And you're like, dude, I'm looking for something that's bone conduction. These are great headsets. You're not listening to me. I want bone conduction, right? And so just listening, and we see it in doctors' offices, even when I'm coaching doctors on having better conversations. I'm like, are you listening to them? Are you just checking the boxes, literally? Or are you asking the next best question? If you really want to share results, you got to ask the next best question.
Brilliant. I truly believe that if you ask the right questions and listen actively, your prospect will tell you everything you need to know in order to help them choose to become your client. And it's not about your brilliant presentation skills, and it's not about your strong closing skills. It always comes down to me, to questioning and listening skills. So I'm with you 1,000,000%. Good morning, Don Levine. Good to see you, my friend. One of the things that I'm certainly looking to do, and that you recommend, is that you want to become known as the go-to expert. You want to be known as, most people would call that a thought leader. What can salespeople do to become known as a go-to expert so that prospects seek us out? Because I'm always looking to have people raise their hand rather than me calling you and say, hey, Dawnna, looking for any sales coaching or sales training today? Which, of course, you'd be the wrong person to call. But if you were, I'd rather you call me and say, hey, I heard you really are great with coaching salespeople and sales teams. Tell me a little bit about that. How do we get people to raise their hand, and how do we get people to think of us as the go-to person?
Well, to get people, first you have to get people to think of you, right? And so, quite honestly, you're going to have some testicular fortitude or ovarian audacity to say something that other people aren't saying. It starts there, right? The one thing that I notice is that there's a lot of regurgitation going online. No one is saying anything new. We're not looking deeper. And what we're doing is we're putting out, surface BS, and then we're going, I don't know why why no one's calling me. I know why they're not calling you. You're not interesting. Like, let's start there. So if you really want to be a thought leader, you're going to have to bring it up a bit, right? You're going to have to do something that other people aren't doing. I'm not saying you got to go and twerk on YouTube at all, but I am saying that you have to start being so friggin' boring. Say something that people care about. Challenge people's mindsets. Get people to think differently. Go and really back away from where everyone is and go somewhere different. That's how you become a thought leader. I did a 90-minute in 2020. I did a 90-minute training on LinkedIn for free because we were going through a pandemic, and I knew that people, for the first time, were now working in a way that hadn't worked before, and they just didn't know how to do what I knew how to do. So I did this training. Everybody said I was crazy. I then turned around and said, you know what I hated about that training? I hated that I constantly had to turn around and write on a board. I hated it. It drove me absolutely nuts. I felt like I lost the engagement with the audience. So I went and built in a room in my house a lightboard studio. And I had never built one before, but I was like, can't be that complicated. It's glass and light. Figure it out. It's glass, light, markers. Let's do it, right? And so I built that, and I used that for that training. Do you know that 1 switch, that one dislike of turning around and deciding to do something differently from August to December made me over $500,000 in coaching services in 6 months. I had not built first of all, I just want everyone to know, it was a 4x6 half-inch thick piece of glass. It was over 200 pounds, and I had to figure out how to actually build the whole studio. It was a risk, but you gotta have enough belief in yourself that you can risk some shit. Like, go for it. Like, stop worrying about what everybody's gonna think. Who gives a crap what they think? The people who love you are going to be there, because the more you say what you got to say, the more those people are going to jump in. And the haters, great. They're awesome. It's great. Like, I love my haters because I can stand on my back. So their fans, I can stand on their back so my fans can see me more. Start doing something. Stop being so damn boring.
Brilliant. I had a partner for a short time, about 3 years. And when I'm watching a speaker, the thought in my head is often, God, do they suck? I should be up on that stage. But he was a great speaker. I always want to be the center of attention. I always loved when his name was Dawnna. He was up on the stage. He was just brilliant. And when either of us was about to take the stage, we had a little thing we would always do. It would be, don't be effing boring.
Right. Don't be boring. Like, seriously, don't be boring. And I do ask people, when I'm coaching them, I challenge them to, here's another way to be an amazing thought leader. Another way to be an amazing thought leader is, I want you to look at your industry right now, whatever is going on in your industry, and I want you to find 5 terms that they use all the time. Now redefine them. I'll give you a perfect example. In the coaching world, I started saying several years ago, if a person is a coach that they don't have a methodology, they're not a coach, they're winging it. Run for the hills. Said it all the time. That it started becoming one of those things where people were saying it back to me. And I'm like, yeah, I have a methodology. I may have heard of this saying before, right? And they were saying it in the exact way that I would say it. So I knew it had gotten around. So that's number 1. And then number 2, take something that people say that, like unique selling proposition. I love that all the time. What's your unique selling proposition? No one knows what the hell that is. So I started calling it your big viral promise. I cannot tell you how many people now say big viral promise. What's your BVP? What's your big viral promise? Right? Have the courage to start making changes. If you hear something and it doesn't make sense, change it. Why not you? I told this lady the other day, she's a prospect that I'm talking to, and she's in the DEI world, right? Diversity, equity, and inclusion. Well, 2 or 3 years ago, it used to be called diversity and inclusion. And I told her, I said, someone put the E between the D and the I to make it DEI. She goes, yeah, I know. I said, who did that? She goes, I don't know. I said, so why not you? I'm like, DEI is changing so significantly right now in the landscape. Why can't you be the person who propels the change? And she was just like, pause for a long time. Why can't you be the person that propels the change? Right? I tell people all the time, I got 9 boxes that made me 6 figures on a regular basis, on a client by client basis, 9 little boxes. Why do I have to have 560 million hours of content to teach you how to do sales? I can teach you how to sell in 90 minutes. And that's not me being egotistical. That's me using stats. 90 minutes. And I can teach you and make it so easy that anything else I give you over there just takes your sales and puts it on steroids. Why don't we have the balls to say that? Let's go. Let's do it.
Got it. So I was going to ask you about the 9 boxes. Can you tell us a little bit about what those are, or at least some of them?
Yeah. So
I don't want to give away everything, but
no, you're fine. So the 9 boxes, we jokingly call it the bat signal, right? And the reason it's called the bat signal is I'm going to give you a little story to help you understand the 9 boxes. So I want you to imagine that. And by the way, if you don't know what DC Comics or Marvel is, then I'm sorry that you've lived under a rock forever. I can't help you. You're not my client. So
you are a nerd.
Right? Yes, I am a nerd. Like, obviously, Star Wars is better than Star Trek. We know this, right? Marvel is better than DC for sure, right? And Black Panther was the greatest movie ever made. Okay, so now we got that out of the way. Let's go.
We're going to talk about Lord of the Rings too.
Okay, yes, but all they did was walk. Okay, so anyway, even the trees walked. That's all they did. Okay, so let's do this. Now you know I'm a nerd, right? I didn't play Dungeons and Dragons though, but I did love the movie. All right, so when we start looking at it, Commissioner Gordon, right? He pops up the bat signal, and I want you to remember, like, this is their first time like getting together, so they kind of know each other, but not really. Commissioner Gordon pops up the bat signal. He's like, "Oh my God, I have this emergency," and Batman's like, "What is it?" He goes, I'm glad you got out of the bat cave, and you drove your little Batmobile, and you got your whole belt and everything ready to go, because there is this cat in this tree, right? And we can't get it out." And Batman's like, "The hell? I'm not doing that." This is the epitome of a salesperson who they get the call and the person's like, "I'm really interested in your stuff." And they go, "Cool. I got this. I got this. I got this. I got that. I got all these things." And they're like, "Yeah, no. I just wanted to know how I get a postage stamp." Like it's the most basic, cheapest thing you can buy. So the first part of the back signal is what we call the dark side. Yes, I am mixing metaphors. Just go with it. Okay, so the first part of the bat signal is called the dark side. I've actually given you the first three questions. What's going on in your world? What's frustration? What are you dealing with? How'd you get there? And what are you worried about happening? First three questions, that's the dark side. It literally is called the dark side because I need your mouth to be dark. Yeah, I need you to shut the hell up and let the customer talk. Because if you recognize that a customer will fall in love with you if you let them do the talking, then you'll stop talking.
Bingo.
Yeah, that's number one. So that's the dark side. Here's the second part. This is why Batman started like asking some questions before he'd pop up. Second part is the gauntlet of disqualification, aka God. The gauntlet of disqualification, literally God determines whether or not you can make it through to the light side, right? So gauntlet of disqualification, time, effort, and money. That is the skin in the game that your client has to have. If you sell something to them and they don't have any time at all, like, and I'll use the spa. Okay, I'm going to sell you this spa package. All you got to do is literally show up, right? And they're like, "Oh, I don't have time on my calendar." The package isn't going anywhere. Time, effort, money. They have to have skin in the game in regards to effort. This is so missed so often. And what happens is the client will call you and they'll be expecting you to do it for them, and you don't have a DFY service. So I want you to imagine that people are calling you and they're like, "Jeff, I'm so excited to get on the phone with you." And you never ask that middle part. And then they get to the end and they're like, "Okay, so I'm going to send you these leads for you to start calling." And you're like, "Oh, we definitely have a miscommunication here." Right? So the second part is effort. Who's going to do what? Who's responsible for doing what? And this is before we even talk about the solution. And then the last one is investment. What kind of skin in the game? Because listen, I have $100,000 package and I have a $3,750 package. Where are you in this range? Because it modifies what I'm going to share with you. We have to get that out of the way before we ever start talking to them about our solution. When I'm talking to someone, I'm like, "Listen, I'm listening to you. I probably have 3 solutions in mind. And based on which one is right for you, the gauntlet of disqualification will tell me. And that's the one I'll talk to you about." So that's the gauntlet of disqualification. And the last part is the light side. The light side is where you get to share your solution and the transformation. You don't get to share it before you have qualified them with God. You cannot.
Sorry, I just looked at John Hill's comment, which says, hold on, I'm going to share it.
Oh, hi, John.
It's good. My friend John Hill likes you, Dawnna. Oh,
Thanks,
that's
John.
fantastic.
Right. So that's the 3 parts: dark side, gauntlet of disqualification, light side. And it literally goes in that order. There are other things we teach, like handling objections, blah, 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 blah. But those 9 boxes have literally made me millions of dollars.
I love that. And I'm sitting here thinking, I think I have to fire my marketing company because we don't have anything like the gauntlet of disqualification. I like that a lot.
Yeah, you need that. You definitely need a gauntlet of disqualification. And of course, I got so lucky that it was called God. I'm like, really? God determines whether or not you get to the light.
That's great. In my coaching practice, I often find that salespeople, even highly experienced salespeople, they choke at the end. The first choke is always when it comes to discussing price. They don't do that well. And then when they're trying to close, it's awkward. How can we make closing less awkward?
Gauntlet of disqualification. God, quite honestly, because think about what I just talked about. What happens is this: we go and share our solution, and then they say, it doesn't fit on my calendar. I thought you were going to do it for me. I don't have the money. Gauntlet of disqualification gets that out of the way. We should not be handling objections. We should be crushing them before they happen. Quite honestly, we should be 8-miling M&M those mugs, right? So what people aren't doing that, right? We need, and for people who don't know, again, I cannot help you. Watch TV. So people, we really need to be heading them off at the pass. I'll tell people, quite honestly, that's why I'll say, okay, this is exactly how I do it. I have 3 solutions in mind, and I usually have 3, might be 2, but I have X number of solutions in mind. However, before I share those solutions with you, I need to talk to you about time, effort, and investment. I need to know what your schedule is, what you're willing to do from a time perspective, and then we'll talk about it. Then I'll say, okay, we covered time. Let's talk about effort and investment. Then we'll talk about effort. Then I'll say, we covered time and effort. Now let's talk about investment. I haven't shared with them the solution yet. Right? So what I'm doing is I'm getting past all of those objections. Then when I talk about investment, I will tell them, let me tell you the 3 objections I hear. I still haven't shared my solution. So let me tell you the 3 objections I hear. I got to talk to my significant other, which could be true, right? I have to talk to my significant other. I need time to think about it, right? Or some other random thing. I said, so let's talk about those now before we even get to the solution. When you do that, by the time they get to the solution, and I'm not saying you're cornering people, but what you're doing is, quite honestly, you're getting rid of the bullshit ahead of time.
You're saving time. Look,
Absolutely.
I always love talking to people that I agree with, and I'm agreeing with almost everything you're saying. And there's something I call an every time objection, and that's an objection that comes up over and over and over. And instead of waiting until you've asked somebody to buy and then they say no and give you the objection, you might as well bring it up early on in the process. Because for me, one of the things I'm always looking to do is to make sure that my time isn't wasted. Now, I don't want to waste anybody else's time. I want to respect everybody's time, but the person whose time I respect most, this guy. So why would I want to have 15 meetings with you only to find out that whatever I'm going to suggest to you, you don't have the money, or you don't have the time, or you're not willing, all those things you said. I'd rather find out that out in the first conversation, and that means I've got to bring it up typically. But if I know I'm going, if you've been in sales for, I say, more than 2 weeks, you heard every objection you're going to hear. It's not like you're going to hear some new one, 5 years down the line. I mean, I've never worked with a single organization, and I've worked with large companies like you, that gets more than 5 objections, although they might think they're getting 200. So let's figure out what are those objections. So let's deal with them early on so that we don't have somebody thinking the whole time. Because if you're getting those same objections over and over, that means the prospect's thinking of it during the whole process. And I want to get rid of them quickly to either help them get past them. And I don't like the word overcome either. Nobody likes to be overcome. Yeah. I want to help them work past them. Or I want to say, you know what? We're not a good match. Let me introduce you to my friend Dawnna. She's perfect for you. I'm not right for you. And then move on to somebody who may be right for you. Why waste time? It simply doesn't make sense. So,
and the best thing about doing it this way is that you still haven't shared your solution. And this is where the power is, because you have the solution. They want the solution. They really want the solution. And so you're sitting there like literally dangling the carrot, and I haven't shared the solution yet. And so they're dying to answer my questions, because at this point I'm like, yeah, I have a solution for you. I have 3, but I need this, and let me check that out. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, they'll tell me whatever I need to hear in order to get to the solution.
Exactly right. That's my belief too. Your prospect, if you ask the right questions and listen actively, will tell you everything you need to know to help them choose to become your customer. And it's not about you talking them into it.
There's something. Your next sale is their best idea.
1,000,000%. I'm just watching the clock and I see we're quickly running out of time, and I've got a bunch more questions. I'm going to ask you this one. So many salespeople rely on discounting and they think that's a negotiation strategy, which of course it is not. Discounting is not negotiating. Those are two very different things. How do we ditch discounting?
I got you 100% on this. First of all, you got to know what sales is, right? So the way that people look at sales is I hear all kinds of stuff. I'm trading time for value or product for value, blah, 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 blah. It is not. I'm going to tell you what sales in and beginning of the year is perfect time to do this. Here we go. You got two people that are going to offer you gym memberships, right? Now, you have promised that you're going to lose that last 20 pounds. You're freshman 15 since you were a freshman, right? And so now you're like, no, this year I'm committed to doing it, right? And so you go to this one person that says, listen, I want to be with you on this commitment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to charge you $25 a month to go to the gym. And then if you're late at any time during that month, I'm going to charge you $25 for that month. So you're going to end up paying $50 for the month if you're ever late. So the most it's ever going to cost you for the year is $600. Okay, great. I don't know if you're like me, I'm going to write the check for $600 and I'm never going to want to hear their mouth again because probably after March, I'm disappearing. All right. So there's number one. Number two is the other one that says, I know what they're offering, right? They do the $25. And if you're ever late that month, you get charged double. They're like, yeah, okay, well, that's not my thing. I actually want you to be successful. So I'm going to charge you $25 a month. They're like, well, that's what they're charging. But wait, if you are ever late, I'm going to charge you $25. If you are ever absent, I'm going to charge you $25. So if you miss a month, I'm going to charge you $750 in fees plus the $25 you owe me for that month. So you're going to get hit with $775 for not being committed. Now, most people are like, well, the second guy's not going to get the money. If I'm committed, the second guy's getting the money, not the first guy. Why? The first guy stole my commitment by discounting. The second guy is going to help me get to my goals by not. So when you recognize that sales is quite honestly, your job in sales is to help people get to the results, not just sell it to them. To make sure that they are committing the time, the effort, and the investment. And when you discount, you steal that investment. You steal that commitment. You thieving bastard. So you really have to don't discount. You can incentivize. I've incentivized people. If they do something positive, right? They have to do something positive. Then I will reward them for that positive behavior. You pay the invoice in full within X amount of days. Yes, I'll give you 6% for paying that in full within X amount of days. But I only incentivize based on behavior that I want them to do.
I love that.
So John said his frustration was the question, how much? Oh my gosh, John, I'll tell you how I answer this question. And I answer it. So I've gotten people that call me and they'll go, how much is your coaching program? And I'm like, would you like me to tell you about it? No, I'm like $100,000. And then they're like, really? And I'm like, yeah, I thought you had other programs. I said, I do, but you don't want to talk to about them. So it's $100,000. Because what I'm not going to allow you to do is I'm not going to allow the prospect to turn me into a commodity. When you're ready, if you're price shopping, you're not looking for me. I'm not the cheapest. Probably one of the best, but not the cheapest. So if you're price shopping, you need to go somewhere else. And so I'll just give them the price. And the thing is, we as sales pros think that somebody has money, so they're the perfect client. I've had people that have no money but great credit. And so they go and use our third-party financer, and they end up getting their ROI because we have a 2x ROI guarantee anyway. Why would when someone asks me how much, I just give them a number. And I usually give them the highest number that I can come up with for the package. So I know we have $120,000 product. So I go $100,000, you pay in full.
Yeah, I do something similar. I'm like, look, I have programs for $500. I've done programs for $250,000. I have no idea which one you need right now, but I have both. Should we continue talking? But yeah. I'm with you. I'm not going to let first of all, I completely agree. If somebody's looking for the cheapest price, I'm definitely not their guy.
Not me.
When it comes to what you and I do, I don't believe anybody's looking for the cheapest price. No one. What they're looking for, when somebody's calling you, Dawnna, I believe they're looking for the best coach they can possibly find. at a price they feel is reasonable and worth it, and that they can actually afford.
Right.
If you have $100,000 program, there are some people who just don't have $100,000, and that's okay.
Right.
But
Yeah. Yeah. I have a range of programs, but when they call me and ask me that, when they try to commoditize me, I go, I'm $100,000. I have ranges from 3750 to 120,000, but I just go, oh, 100 grand. There's nothing else for us to talk about because you're looking for something off the shelf, and I'm definitely not on the shelf.
no, you're definitely not. I think we only have time for one more question, so I'm going to go with this. You talk about pitching, which is a word I despise. I hate the word. It just brings, if you ever saw the show Mad Men, that's what it brings up to me. But you talk about pitching at the wrong time. What advice do you have about pitching too soon?
So a lot of times, so there's 5 phases of a buyer journey. The first phase is the newbie. The newbie only wants to know, what is it, who's it for, and why do I care? That's what they care about. They don't even care about the how or any of that stuff. Those are 3 things. If you pitch it this time, if you start selling, when I talk about pitching, I'm literally saying you sharing your solution. If you're pitching at that time, it's way too soon, right? The second thing, once they leave being a newbie, if they're still interested, and here's a good example of a newbie, they go into Home Depot and they find out that they can get an electric hot water heater rather than having the big one, right? And so then they go in there and they go, what is it? It's an electric hot water heater. Who's it for? People who own their home. Why do I want it? Because you'll never run out of hot water and it'll lower your bill. Okay. If I'm living in an apartment, I am now not a newbie. I am an naysayer. I'm out. Good to know you. There's no need in keep talking. But if you start pitching to this person right now, they're trying to figure out how to get away from you. So now you want to go to the next one. The next one is they want to know the cues: time, quality, the quantifiables, time, effort, money. How soon can you put it in? How long does it take to put in? What do I have to do? Like, do I have to go get a permit or something? And then how much does it cost? What's the investment? Those are the next 3 things they want to know. They might even want to know a range of investment. You can get the little one, or you can get the big one, or you can get 2 of them, right? They want to know their range of investment based on what their current situation is, right? Still too soon to pitch, right? You're not there yet. Next one is then they might become a curious cat. Curious cat literally means, I'm sorry, not a curious cat. That was the second guy. They might become a Seymour. Seymour is the person who's like, I want to see more information. This means that during the conversation in which you have spoken to them, you have not done a good job connecting your beliefs to their beliefs and building trust. That's why they're asking for proof. So if you start pitching before you give a person an ample amount of proof or an ample amount of trust, and they're not asking for the next step, then you're pitching way too soon. When you actually want to pitch is generally when the person starts going, I really want this. Then you can share your solution. But if they're not to the point of I really want this and how do we work together, then you're pitching too soon.
I'm with you 1,000,000%. Nobody gets a presentation from me until I've asked a million questions and made sure that A, they're actually interested, and B, I want to work with them. Why waste the time? And so why would you want to give a presentation to somebody who has no interest in what you've got, can't afford it, or just isn't the right person? I'm with you 1,000,000% there. And with that, I can't believe it. I could talk to you all day, and I'd love to, but we're actually out of time. So before we go, how can people reach you if they're interested in working with you, Dawnna, or they want more information?
Actually, so they can go to salessuperstar.net. They can also, which that'll give them an opportunity to get like a downloadable so they can actually see that framework I talked about earlier. They can actually email me. Yes, I actually take emails. If you see my first name, my email address is just my first name at myfirstname.com. Yes, I have my own .com with my first name. So
Dawnna at Dawnna.com?
Yep.
Got it. Is there a phone number you want to give out?
Yeah, it's I can just say it real quick. It's 954-558-5999.
Perfect. And I'll ask you either to come into the Sales Pro Network and put that information for people who may not have caught this, or just send it to me and I'll make sure it gets in there. Dawnna, I could talk to you all day. You're delicious. Before we go, I'll say this. I'll end as I always do. Everybody, please remember that sales is a game of making things happen. So get out there and make sales happen. Have a great weekend, everybody. Have a great weekend, Dawnna. Thank you so much.
I think.